Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. This is the 164th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I have with me today longtime friend and colleague Mick Colageo. Mick, please tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
I live blog Bruins home games on my Rink Wrap blog, which I link to on X and Twitter at Mick Colageo, and X and Facebook. And I also contribute to the seasonal issues of the Hockey News. The next one that comes out will be the Future Watch about the prospects.
Love that. Future Watch is always a great edition of the Hockey News. Let's also, actually, I'm going to introduce myself because I didn't do that at the beginning of the show. My name is Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. You get all of my Bruins and NHL writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns 3 times a week for the Boston Sports Journal, so go to bostonsportsjournal.com. So please subscribe to that. Lots of good stuff there on all the different Boston sports. Before we get into the Bruins, and, Mick, this is going to be an interesting show because it's a natural break in the schedule, right, with the Four Nations tournament coming up. They're not going to play for 2 weeks, and I think this is a good time to sort of take a long look at the Bruins and evaluate where they are and where they sit with 25 games to go. So this is an important sort of, watermark in the season, and we're going to talk about that. But before we do that, let's thank our sponsors. Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Let's also thank the folks at Game Time. If you need any kind of tickets whatsoever, Game Time is your place to go. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Mick?
Game time.
Game time is correct. Tough way that the Bruins went out of this break, Mick. They talked a lot about treating these last 4 games like the playoffs, and the first couple of games looked pretty good. They did a good job. And then the last 2 games, they blew points. Let's face it. They had points, and we've seen this a lot with this team this year. I wrote about this not after last night's or yesterday afternoon's game, but I think the last game against the Rangers, counting that Golden Knights loss last night, 4-3, where they had a 3-1 lead, and then it was tied, and it was a couple minutes to overtime, and they couldn't hang on. I think that's at least 6 games that I can count where they blew leads or couldn't quite push into overtime where they really had a chance to late in the game. And they'd be in a much different situation even if they just got 1 point in all those games, Mick. If they had 5 or 6 more points, they would be in a tremendously different situation. Even if maybe half of those games they had pulled out points, they'd be in a much different situation than they are right now. But I feel like this is a team that pretty consistently has not been able to get that push that they need in the third period to get to overtime to at least get that point, and has blown a bunch of leads where they didn't get anything when they should have at least got a point. And that game against Vegas, the 4-3 loss, it was kind of appropriate in a lot of ways for me because I think it's kind of a microcosm for the season, and it's what we've seen all year, and it's kind of like I believe what they are at this point. And I don't have any reason to believe that it's going to be any different in the 25 games when they come back from the Four Nations. And I almost felt like there was a little resignation with the players afterwards. There wasn't anger. There wasn't disgust. There wasn't strong emotion. They were saying the right things, but I kind of almost felt like they didn't believe what they were saying. Like they were trying to convince themselves that they still had a shot with 25 games to go, and that they almost didn't believe what they were saying. They were just kind of saying what they felt like they needed to say, maybe hoping to talk themselves into the belief. That was my sentiment, and that's what I felt like I got out of that locker room yesterday after the game was over.
A couple of things. After they made the coaching change after 20 games and they had an immediate spike, an adrenaline-driven spike with Joe Sacco, I thought that at the time that would have been a perfect time to go get a stick like Tyler Toffoli's and find a way to get a winger who might have eased some of the 1-goal games that wound up not going their way because they're such a grinded out team unless Pasta's hot. They're like the Celtics a couple of years ago. If Tatum was hot, they win. If Tatum's not, they lose. I just feel like this team has become so focused on key players' contributions that good opponents can take away those key players for the most part, and the Bruins won't have enough to make up the difference. And then you mix in with that the season-long legacy of not being able to outscore their mistakes. Even yesterday when Nikita Zadorov, who almost had 2 goals in this game, blasted the puck yesterday twice. The second one was taken away. Too bad. Marchand goalie interference. But when he was on a penalty kill and he had extra time to clear that puck, and you could see he waited and changed his mind, surveyed the ice, and then failed to clear. And 30 seconds later, the puck's in the net. And those kinds of mistakes have just been killing this team all year long, not because of the quantity of them, but because of how timely they've been. And they just can't afford them. And it's not like Zadorov is a 22-year-old defenseman that they're breaking in. This is a guy that they got to bring in to try to add some oomph to their team. And it was a gamble because they know that he's a volatile player who gives you good and bad luck. And even in a game where he was giving you good stuff, he wound up giving you something bad. So I look at that, and then I think, okay, now here's the other prism. They change coaches after 20 games. To your point about postgame, this is another watershed point in the season, the Four Nations. The trade deadline is the trade deadline, but I feel like the Four Nations, I have no doubt, given how results-driven the Bruins management team is when it comes to trade deadlines and strategies on what they believe about their team and what they're going to try to build, they would never do what Chris Drury did and telling the rest of the league, look, I know we're 14-5-1 or something, but we really don't like our team. We don't feel like these fixtures. We feel like there's a lot of smoke and mirrors here. We're open for business. The Bruins would never do that. They believe in the results, and so after 20 games, they looked at their results and they made a change at 8-9-3. Now we're where we are. I think everyone knew what this means. Now, granted, Rangers was the second of back-to-backs. It was a game that they could have won if they didn't give up that shorty to Kreider. But those kinds of mistakes have been killing them all season long. And to me, if they had added that stick earlier in the season when they righted their ship, then maybe some of these games aren't that close. And if only 5 of the L's are W's, where are they? Like you just said. So, but where are they now? Devastating loss, referred to by one person yesterday as brutal. And that, to me, tells me that everybody in that room knew where this is going. The strategy will be based on where they are and how they ended and how they went into the break.
The feeling I got in that room yesterday, talking to the players, listening to how they were answering questions, what they were saying, it told me that they're putting on a brave face. They're putting on like the face that they feel like they need to, and saying things they need to say in that situation. But it felt to me the way they were saying it and the way they looked like they didn't believe what they were saying. When they were saying, we've still got 25 chances when we get back, and Marchand saying we can play with any team in the league. Oh, by the way, they lost twice to Winnipeg and they got outscored 14-3 in those 2 games. So I don't think they can play with Winnipeg. So I don't even know why he was
they
saying. They
certainly haven't proven it.
I don't even know why he would say that we can play with any team in the league, because there's definitely some teams they cannot play with, and it's already been shown. So I understand the defiance and sort of the, trying to project confidence and all the stuff that they were doing, but you could just tell they didn't really believe what they were saying. And it was just a down team.
They knew they couldn't be convincing. They even whether to believe it or not, they knew we don't.
Right. But they know it seems like they kind of know where they are and what they are at this point. They've seen enough, and I think everybody has to believe that they've got to trade some players. I think they got to mix it up. They got to change the mix. They need to get anybody that they don't think is in a long-term picture with this team. They should get value for at the deadline, get something for, whether it's, Justin Brazeau is one we haven't really talked about, but he's another interesting one that they could probably get something pretty good for. And he's going to be a free agent because of his, service time and what his situation.
And he was not in yesterday.
He's a UFA and he didn't play yesterday. That's what somebody pointed out to me. And they said he's not playing today. I wonder why that is. And maybe they didn't want him to get hurt before this Four Nations break when they're going to talk about trades and they're going to move some players. And he's definitely a guy that will have value. Like I could see another team looking at him and saying, we could use that big body down low. We use him on the power play. Like he's a guy, you put him with some good players, he's going to be very effective.
So maybe there's a middle round pick coming.
Yeah. So I think there's
I don't think the wheels are turning a little bit for a seventh.
I think the wheels are turning a little bit on some of these guys and maybe potentially moving some players that aren't in the long-term future. And I think they should. They can still try to compete for a playoff spot. The odds aren't with them, but they're right there. They can, and they have the players to be able to push through, but maybe. But they have 25 games left. They're going to have to go 17-8 or something like that to make the playoffs and to hop over a couple of teams and to get in there and to, withstand the games in hand that everybody has against them.
And win on the road, which they haven't done all year.
Right. So there's a lot there that they're going to have to do, which I just didn't feel like the belief was there. It's funny you mentioned Zadorov. I thought he was good until that point yesterday. I thought he had an excellent game. It was one of his best games as a Bruin until the very end when he couldn't clear the puck and the penalty kill just imploded. And it's just such a bad look when they get a break. The goal gets overturned for goalie interference, and you can't use that momentum to even just get to overtime, to hang on and get to overtime and kill that penalty.
A lot of Marchand's penalties in the second half of the season have been punitive.
Yeah. They've really hurt the team. There's no doubt. But the one other thing I would mention that you didn't mention, Mick, that I think is notable is Jeremy Swayman. Horrible goal at the end of the second period. Soft goal where he's just fumbling the puck. It squirts in the net. And you can't give up that goal there. That's not why they're paying him the money. That is not the guy that they need. And that he's been pretty good for, a month plus since the beginning of January. But that was a killer goal. That hurt them too. And I know they were just hanging on and they weren't playing great anyway. But I felt like that was I felt that whole comeback coming for Vegas after he gave up that goal at the end of the second period and let in something out of nothing. It was a puck that he handled. It was a routine shot. He was doing something where he was trying to flip around with the glove, and he ended up knocking it between his legs into the net. It's just, you can't let in goals like that in situations like that. And I thought that was the beginning of the end for them in that game.
In the biggest of pictures, I feel like a team should be able to make the playoffs with the goaltending the Bruins have gotten this year.
Yeah.
That said, Swayman has been part of this picture, like Marchand said that time when given the opportunity to take him off the hook. He's been part of the picture. And his biggest part of the picture was early on.
Yep.
So, these are the ramifications of decisions that he made and the team made. And so extraordinary goaltending of the last two prior years, would that have gotten this team into the playoffs? Perhaps.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have made him a cup contender.
No.
We know that.
No, to your point, if the goaltending wasn't subpar, far below what they usually get the first 20 games of the year, they're in a better spot too. There's no doubt about it. And that is, as you said, on the organization and definitely on Swayman too. It's on the both of them. And there's a lot of blame there. And that's why I thought it was also kind of appropriate yesterday that he gives up a soft, bad goal that helps lead to their demise in that game, because he was such a part of the storyline and the situation the early part of the year when they just absolutely stumbled out of the gate. And everybody knew it was coming. The players all knew, his teammates all knew, everybody knew that struggle was coming based on him missing all the training camp and the way that situation unfolded.
Well, and since you're making that point, I just want to interject this one thought. this is a risky muse because, well, you'll hear. I think in secret, Don Sweeney still believes what he believed about last year's team and that the additions that he made should have put this team into cup contention. But for various and sundry reasons, along with the Swayman situation, Marchand needing time to round into form after 3 summer surgeries, an inexplicable number of returning veterans coming back into camp and having a lousy, lifeless camp and a lifeless beginning to the season. It just was a perfect storm of this thing is not going well, and Monty couldn't outrun it. And after the surge, Joe Sacco was like, let's start with our underpinnings. We're a defensive team. We got to check. We got to shut down. We got to have our goaltending. We got to have our defense. We get all that. We think this team can score goals. That was the kernel. That was the theory. That was the big bang of anything good that was going to happen for the rest of the season.
Yep.
And for the most part, the Bruins have been a sounder defensive team, but they lose the tight ones against good teams and they fall apart on the road. And I think that's because they push too hard because they don't have enough. And that's when you lose your structure. And that's when you drop your right, you get caught in the jaw and you go down. Yep. And I think that that's what's happened in a lot of their bad games this year. So, this just didn't work out like Sweeney thought. But my point of this is, I still think that there's part of him that's struggling with this and believing that if we didn't have the problems we had entering the season, then this thing might have all worked out. So then should we rip it up? Or if we rolled the same dice next year, how much better would we be? And the problem is you can't go back. It's a results business, and changes are always made in these cases. So that's the struggle, I think, within Bruins management is, damn it, I want a do-over with what we did. We decided because I still believe it. But then you don't get that do-over, though. You can't go from one season to the next without making changes. That's why I think, and because Trent Frederick has not had a good year statistically.
Yep.
And he's every once in a while he pops in a goal here or there and he looks like the player everybody hopes he'll be. And then there's 5 games where there's not a lot happening. And that, as we get to this point and where are they now and the results orientation of the management, I've lost my confidence that they're going to tie him up. I think he's gone.
Yeah, I do too. And I've felt that way for a while. And that's why I think he's a guy that's going to get traded. The Brazeau one is sort of interesting. And I think I'd assumed they were going to sign him. But they may, if they can get a pretty good draft pick for him, I think they should move him. And I think it would be like that's good business, right? They use nothing to get him. They just pick him up off the street. They put some work in with him to develop him and turn him into an asset that can get them back a good draft pick. Like you do that. I would do that all day long. But I've felt for a while now like Frederick was going to get traded. I just don't think he's a part of long-term future. I think they're not going to want to pay whatever he's going to get paid on the market, whatever his value is, and they will let somebody else pay him. And, why not try to recoup something close to the first-round pick you used to draft him? I think that's something you definitely – or a player that's going to help you, one or the other.
And I think that Nikita Zadorov is the Derek Morris of 2025.
Ooh,
I think that that's
a Bruins deep cut right there, Derek Morris.
Yeah, they went from Nick Boynton to Paul Mara to Aaron Ward to Derek Morris to Dennis Seidenberg, and the great search for the perfect partner for Zdeno Chara. And even though Johnny Boychuk played most of the hockey with him, he and Seidenberg were the shutdown pair in the playoffs during their sweet spot. So I think that, to me, Zadorov
he's the Morris. The kind of money in Derek Morris that they've invested in Nikita Zadorov, though.
Well, right. And so you're making my point, because how the hell is he playing with Andrew Peeke right now? And how is Charlie McAvoy coming, as I thought they were going to, because of the way last year ended? I thought that that they were going to roll the dice with Mason Lohrei playing with Charlie McAvoy. And here we are, the most important hockey of the season, and Charlie McAvoy is playing with Mason Lohrei. Nikita Zadorov is playing. Was he impactful yesterday? Yes. Positively, potentially positively, negatively. Typical Zadorov game big footprint on that one. And, and to me, he has kind of become the Derek Morris. Now, they're going to do what they did with Derek Morris and tell him, yeah, sorry, it didn't work out. Because at the deadline, I bet there are takers.
Yeah, no, there would be. I mean, I think Vancouver wanted to keep him, so there would definitely be takers. I don't think they're trading him. I don't see that happening. I'd be surprised if that happens. But I agree with you that it hasn't been a great fit in a regular season at times. And there are parts of his game that hurt them when it comes to wins and losses. There's no doubt about it. But like the other part of it, like you talk about him, like skating with Andrew Peak. I mean, he did skate 25 minutes yesterday in that game. So he was playing with other partners. And he was playing a lot. Like he was playing.
They elevated him.
He was playing at the level that, they would expect a guy that they're paying that kind of money for as far as ice time goes. He was a heavy use guy in that game. All right, let's take a break, Mick, and we'll get back into all of this. I just want to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun, and it's super simple. The big game is almost here, and it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prize Picks is also giving away a free pick for the big game, where one of the starting quarterbacks will only need to throw 1 yard to win. That's just 1 yard to win. If you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can win real cash. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Check out the promo tab to tail any of our Super Sweat Millie winners' big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. Think Jalen Hurts will get more than 250 passing yards this weekend? Will Patrick Mahomes pass for more than 1.5 touchdowns? Cook up hot takes with your friends and we'll win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. The big game free square is now live with Patrick Mahomes and 0.5 passing yards, so check that out as well. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks, and they also offer MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You didn't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's get back into it, Mick. Do you think there is any chance whatsoever that they make the playoffs? Do you give it like a 0.0% chance right now?
No, I think a lot of things can happen because this year you even saw the Montreal Canadiens go on a tear and put themselves back in that conversation, albeit temporarily.
Yep.
So while they actually had a better points percentage than the Bruins at one point, maybe a week or 10 days ago, they hit a bit of the wall there. This season is full of surges. It's almost like a game of musical chairs. Yep. If your surge comes and then the music stops, you're in a great spot.
Yep.
Because everybody just seems to be rising and sinking like the waves of the ocean. And, none of these teams are contenders, in my opinion. But I do feel like, because none of them are making a significant surge that just is linear. I don't see that. There's no 2018-19 St. Louis Blues here. I don't see that happening. Or the Penguins, the first of the 2 years that they won it in 16 and 17, where they came back, from the dregs. I just see a lot of meandering. It's just so different from, say, 21-22 when you had 6 50-win teams in the conference. And the Bruins had to start. They win 50 games and they had to start the playoffs in Carolina. So this just seems to me like those playoffs were decided in February. This playoff 8 won't be decided until the final day, and this is probably the dream season in the Eastern Conference for the Bettman NHL, where it feels like every team has a chance. So I just don't know. I feel like it's a roulette wheel. It's a game of musical chairs, and when the music stops, it just depends on whether a team was having a good week in 2 weeks or not. Yeah. And that's just where we are. We are. I do think that the Ottawa Senators have pushed themselves above that. They have the makings of a really good hockey team, and it's starting to come to fruition for them. Not enough for them to get serious in the playoffs, but for them to be serious in the regular season, that has happened. And the Bruins are meandering with the rest just because of their multitude of problems, their ailments. It's just they can't seem to stop the bleeding.
No, they can't. But the thing is that the problems become that it's sort of the same stuff over and over again. It's the bad penalties at the wrong times. It's the inability of the penalty kill to get the job done when you need it. It's the goals at the end of periods, those momentum shifting moments that they can't stop. It's not being able to force the issue and push your way into a point at the end of games. Like other teams are able to impose their will on the Bruins at the end of games to push it to overtime and to just basically force a puck into the net and make it happen. And the Bruins can't do that. They have not been able to do that this year at all. That has not been a trait or a characteristic of this team. And then there's, like you said, there's veteran players that I think have just not done their share and have not been good enough. We talked
Some of them are playing better hockey now than they were earlier in the season.
Some of them,
but at the end of the day, they're in a bad spot.
But Trent Frederick is one of them. Charlie Coyle, who I love to death, and I think he's a great person, and I think he had an awesome year last year, has not been good this year.
No, he hasn't. I felt like he pushed it. He started picking it up, and then it's kind of stayed where it was for a while. And so, and I feel like the one positive with Charlie Coyle is I feel like he's sustained some pretty decent play out of position.
Yeah.
That he's been asked to go back to the wing, and I feel like he's been better there than I thought he could be, based on history. In terms of what needs to happen with him going forward, if you're looking at a hockey trade, you're looking at a winger, I think when the Rangers were in the dumpster, I think that would have been the time to pull the trigger on a Coyle for Kreider kind of deal.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen. I don't know if it was ever on the table from either side, but to me, it just the widgets seemed to fit, and it didn't happen. And now they are where they are. So who knows what happens from here? Because again, he's a guy who's not playing where he should be, and I feel like he's better than he was early in the year. But again, not a good year for him.
No, not a good year for him. Not a good year, obviously. First year for Elias Lindholm, who I think has been a little better maybe the last few weeks. You noticed him a little more. He's made a few more plays, and maybe that becomes like he comes back from Four Nations and he has a strong surge at the end. Now, maybe he's a little more comfortable. Who knows? Like I still want to keep an open mind as to who he is and what kind of a player he is, because I don't feel like we've seen the full picture with him. At least I hope not.
No, we haven't. I'm sure we haven't. I just feel like he's been through too many changes.
Yeah. And so we'll see what happens with him. But that's the kind of player that's going to have to really step up his game in that last 25 game stretch. If the Bruins are going to do anything, but they're going to need all hands on deck with those veteran players that stick around, it should be a lot better than they are. Brandon Carlo kills penalties, logs a lot of minutes, hard minutes. But I don't feel like he's had a good year either.
No, he hasn't.
One that
he's
has
fumbled
not,
a lot
really
of pucks.
Struggled.
Fumbled a lot of pucks this year. A lot of plays that you look down the ice and from our perch up on the 9th floor and you say, okay, Carlo's got that. Whoops, he doesn't have that. It's just been that kind of year for him. It's been real struggle. And last year was a bit of a struggle too at times. This year was more of a struggle. So I'm not really sure what management's feeling is about him as he's going into the prime years of his career. It just seemed like he was a more promising player 2, 3, 4 years ago than he has been over the last season.
Yeah. And I mean, he's hit his ceiling as to how good he's going to be as a player. I'm not sure he's going to ever get any better than he is or was a couple of years ago. And it seems like there's been a little regression with him.
A matchup D. But he just seems like he's been part of the picture. Just another guy who's not playing as well as we've seen him play, or at least as consistently well as we've seen him play. So it's a tough one. He's a very thoughtful guy. competes hard. It just hasn't gone well for him like it hasn't with a lot of regulars. It's been that kind of a year for the Bruins. It's been strange.
And even the fourth line, Mick, they came out like gangbusters at the beginning of the year, and they have not been as much of a factor. I know there's been some injuries and things, guys going in and out of the lineup. But when they're together now, Kepke and Kostelic and Beecher have not been the factor that they were at the very beginning that, really made you sit up and take notice as far as the energy and even popping in a goal every once in a while that they were doing earlier in the year.
Well, when Monty tried to elevate those guys by breaking up their little band and sprinkling them through the top 9 in hopes that some of their fervor and magic could rub off on the players who were not showing as strong a pulse.
Yep.
That had more of a negative effect on the fourth line than any positive effect in the top 9. And that fourth line ever since has not looked as good, even when in the brief moments when the band's been back together. Yep. Kostelic, we probably won't know the full story until the season's over of what he's been dealing with. But we know that he has been playing hurt, and he's a tiger. He fights through it all. The guy's a freaking honey badger. but it's just has been a struggle for him since he's gone down with the injuries, beginning with a concussion.
Yep. No doubt. It absolutely has. All right. We're going to get to one more topic. When we come back, we're going to take a little break to talk about game time. We're going to talk about Hampus Lindholm when we get back and his potential effect down that stretch in those 25 games. But let's first talk about game time. If you're looking for any kind of tickets whatsoever, you want to take the guesswork out of buying those tickets by going with Game Time for obviously your Bruins tickets, but also if you're looking for Celtics tickets or even comedy or concert tickets. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The great features at Game Time: priority Game Time picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. All-in pricing. You toggle this feature, shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. My personal favorite, the lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And even if you are looking for tickets, obviously the Bruins aren't playing the next couple of weeks, Mick. But if you're looking for Four Nations tickets at the Garden, I would go check out Game Time as well. Maybe they got some tickets for the Four Nations because the word on the street that I've heard is that the tickets there may be some available, and maybe it hasn't been as brisk as people thought it was going to be as far as people buying up tickets to watch the Four Nations games. And if you can get your hands on tickets for the championship game with the hopes that it's U.S. and Canada there at the end playing, that could be a pretty damn interesting viewing experience, Mick, and that might be worth the money. But bottom line is, go to Game Time to check out all your options for any kind of tickets, comedy, concert, sports, theater, what have you. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Mick?
Game time.
Game time. And let me get your thoughts on the Four Nations. Do you think it's going to be good? Do you think it's going to be intense? Do you think it's going to be sort of a hybrid? Because I can't imagine it's going to be like the Olympics. I got to imagine it's going to be a little less on the intensity level. But the hope has to be that the players are going to play hard.
I think all you need is one thing to happen. Yeah. And it'll snap everyone into taking no prisoners.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you put these teams, these players, these great players into this different context where there's suddenly, I feel like the event likelihood becomes much greater.
Yep.
Because teams are not in the throes of their systems and their expectations and their everything they do by rote. It is going to be a whole different thing. But I do feel like the attitude won't be All-Star Weekend. I feel like it's players who a lot of them want to make sure they make their Olympic team. So
yeah, that's part of it too, for sure.
So I think in Canada and U.S., that's going to be stronger than it will be for Sweden and Finland. But it may affect Sweden and Finland. We'll see. So I do feel like all you need is something to go have some sort of spectacular collision where there's blame and pointing fingers. And next thing you know, the whole thing ramps up. So, and I also think Canada is hypersensitive to the USA's dominance at the teenage level.
Yeah.
And that they have a lot of pride. It is our game. I remember the PA announcer in 1993 when the Canadians hosted the All-Star weekend. And they were really concerned with the influx of Eastern Europeans into the NHL at the time and what that was going to mean for their franchise and their regional dominance. So I think there was just a lot there. They wound up winning the Cup that year. 2 years in a row, the team that hosted the All-Star game won the Cup. Rangers the next year. So it's just been I'm looking forward to, I think it's going to be pretty cool just seeing so many great players across the ice from each other in the same game. It's going to be kind of fun. I know a lot of Bruins fans were pretty much like, oh, damn it, they're interrupting my season for 2 weeks. I hate this. They should have done this before the season. I have no interest in it. I'm hearing this from Bruins fans right and left. This is what I'm getting. I think the crowds of this thing are going to be wearing international colors, and they're going to be coming from those countries, and they're going to be – that's how the crowd's going to be. And now I just found out yesterday that the game presentation will be reinvented. It won't be your typical Bruins game presentation personnel or, you're not going to have Ron Poster on the organ. You're not going to have the typical trappings of a Bruins home game, except here's who's playing. Ain't going to be like that. It's going to be like when the NCAA comes in and takes over your building.
Okay, that's cool. That'll be interesting. Yeah, I there's definitely the not wanting to mail it in because that's going to come into consideration for like the Olympic rosters and stuff. That incentive is definitely going to be there, thinking about the Olympics and wanting to be on those teams so you have a good showing at Four Nations. And that's part of it, the natural competitiveness. I think all that stuff will turn it into, as you said, it will take one thing or one good game to happen, and all of a sudden everybody will snap into it for sure. I think
nobody wants to be embarrassed.
No, that's definitely true. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I think the games at the Garden are going to be fantastic. And I do think there is some level of Canadian angst about USA Hockey and them starting to take over at the international level at the World Juniors. And frankly, starting to take over in the NHL too, where like you're seeing more and more US-born players get to high levels, get picked first overall, be the best players in the league. Like all that stuff is starting to happen. So I would think there's going to be some Canadian effort and some desire to, make a statement about how good they still are and where they sit currently with all the players. All that stuff.
The captain at Vatican City of the NHL is from Arizona.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is where we are right now. I think we're a little desensitized to it in the Bruins market and in New England in general because of the fading legacy that we have with hockey. I do think that, Brian Berard was once first overall. By 2005, not a single Rhode Islander was drafted. Now, in the era of junior hockey and Mount St. Charles becoming a junior program and a high school team is actually now a bit of a footnote to all of that. The whole, post-Belial legacy and trying to get a new arena there and all of that, the makeup of junior hockey and the crystallizing with all these multi-rink complexes and these soup to nuts ADM programs like the Walpole Express, et cetera, that I do feel like there's a resurgence of junior talent and producing, including Rhode Islanders, we just had a native Rhode Island from South County score a goal against the Bruins, Parker Ford.
Yep.
That was pretty cool to see. A kid who played his youth hockey at the Brad Boss Arena, which didn't even exist when I was a sports editor of the Narragansett Times. In the 90s. I kept telling, I told the South Kingstown High School senior athletic banquet, I've been waiting for a hockey rink around here, and I guarantee you, when you see my U-Haul pulling up 138 to leave the
it'll be built
the area, that's when the thing, and that's exactly what happened to the day. Right on the money. Well, predictions I didn't want to be true. That's the one I nailed. So anyway, I do feel like I do feel like we got New England hockey. I think we're just used to not putting out the top player in the world anymore here.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're sort of desensitized to the fact that USA hockey has become such a wide-ranging thing with players from Florida, the Southwest California, formidable players. They're everywhere. So it's in the best place it's ever been, even if New England hockey isn't all it once was.
Yeah, I mean, I think New England hockey still is pretty high up there. I put it this way, like, I think the number one overall pick sort of thing is arbitrary. Like, I think that, like, it's definitely starting to happen more where it's some unconventional places, like you mentioned Austin Matthews, obviously. Like, you're starting to see more unconventional areas produce like high level hockey talent. There's no doubt about that, as far as in the US or, you know, whatever, what have you. But you still see Massachusetts produce at least a couple of first round picks every single season, every single draft.
Yeah.
There's at least, you know, one or two players. The thing that I think is dropping off in New England and Massachusetts is the depth of the talent that's being produced.
No
as
question.
Far as draft picks go.
Families have been priced out of playing hockey.
Yeah, you're still seeing the very, very high-end kids getting taken in the first round. Those kids, the Ryan Leonards, the Will Smiths, those kids are still out there.
Not every kid who makes it is a rich kid, but it's become a rich kid sport.
No, it definitely has. There's no doubt about it. And it's pricing out a lot of good athletes, like, to your point, and that's a problem. Definitely. All right, but let's not get sidetracked. I do want to talk a little bit. Hampus Lindholm, he'll be coming back after the break. They're going to have like 4 or 5 practices coming out of the break before they start playing games. It'll be like a mini training camp.
And they got this one on Tuesday, right?
What's that?
They got today and tomorrow off, but then they're practicing on Tuesday.
I think so. Yeah. So it's like, you know, Lindholm's going to get a chance to really ramp up and get ready. And it totally makes sense that they didn't rush him in before the break. And, you know, they're going to wait until the break to come back and have him do it the right way. How much of an impact can he make a difference? He's obviously a difference-making kind of player. He's going to help the back end in a big way. Can he be enough to help sort of help them go on the kind of epic run that they're going to need to go on in the last 25 games to make the playoffs?
Not discounting the possibility, because Lindholm plays really well with McAvoy.
Yep.
And in the full scope of the season, he was going to be Carlo's partner. I think in the moment, Lowry, for all of his skating and puck handling ability, he gets overmatched at times. And I think that the Bruins are going to have to go top heavy in order to try to eke out the wins on a short-term basis that they need to have in hard road games. And I think if Lindholm is truly ready, and I don't think they'll put him back in until he is, then I think he's going to wind up paired with McAvoy so that the Bruins can have the most formidable 5-man unit and produce goals that have been so hard to come by this season. I remember Paul Maurice saying during the 23 series that the thing he feared most about the Bruins was their 4-man attack. Now, one side, one of those forwards is going to be one of those defensemen, is going to be one of those forwards as the puck enters the attacking zone. This is the game they have to play in order to generate more offense, barring an acquisition. Because even with Pasternak getting hot over the last month, with the new year, with Marchand really being the best athletic version of himself that we've seen all season, and that he's trying so hard and trying to do too much at times, getting himself in the penalty box in the process. It's not carelessness on his part; it's effort. And so I just feel like there needs something more. That's probably one of the rare spots where they could get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch. I'm certainly going to be very interested, curious to see what's going to happen in the last 25 games. I think it's going to be entertaining. It was Swayman, I think, that talked about the season being a roller coaster. I think that's going to be what it's going to be like in the last 25 games too. Maybe they somehow find their way in to the playoffs at the end of it. But I feel like at this point, it's going to be because other teams don't want it or can't take it. It's not going to be because the Bruins are going to take it. That's what I kind of feel like if they're going to make the playoffs, it's going to be by virtue of like other teams falling out of it. because of the pressure, because of injuries, like whatever. I don't get the sense that this team is going to seize it from somebody else and, rip off a long winning streak and earn it on their own, so to speak. But
well, they need a lot of teams to fail, though, for them to be that team without that kind of a surge.
To your point, though, like I think Lindholm puts them in the best position to go on a surge. And it's a great point that you make about him potentially playing with McAvoy and just really like maxing out those guys.
At least in situations. Yeah.
In a 25-game sprint, to the end of the season to try to make it to the playoffs. I would expect the Bruins to coach like every game is a playoff and like they're trying to win every single night and they're just going to ride their horses. And, that's going to be probably putting Lindholm and McAvoy together and cutting the game in half and having them play 25 minutes a night. And that makes, a lot of good sense as far as I'm concerned.
We should note that Matty Patra and Michael Callahan have been assigned to the Providence Bruins for the Four Nations break. I'm not 100% convinced that Patra's coming back. I think that he played really well in Providence and really well when he first got back. I'm not so sure that how I feel about how the Bruins are going to feel about it when it comes to these 25 DEFCON 4 games. I'm not sure how they're going to feel about it at that time.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens here. I'm not really sure. I'm just saying I'm not putting a little asterisk on this.
No, that's a good point, Mick, because I think he's been erratic. Like, he's been a young player. That's what he's been. Like, he's been good some of the games, and some of the games he's been a liability. Some of the games he's just been okay. But you can't count on him that you're going to get the exact same thing every single night in those pressure-packed situations with the playoffs on the line. But then again, I think he's shown the ability to create offense where other players just aren't creating anything.
You're right. He's been able to a couple of games ago, those passes from behind the net, just brilliant stuff that you can see the ability. And the Bruins desperately need that.
Yes.
However, when I look at yesterday's game and I saw what I saw earlier in the season, where he's getting pushed off the puck and his back checks are failing, it's his line a lot of the times when the Bruins are hemmed in.
Yeah, no, and there's been some games. There's been a couple of them in the recent stretch where he's been a little bit of a liability at times. You've seen it. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a very interesting decision. I think it's going to also be one that maybe a trade, takes care of that decision. Who knows if they bring somebody else in, because I think they're going to have to find somebody to come in, especially if they're trading Trent Frederick too. Like, I would expect if they trade Frederick, that Patra would be the guy and he would be the third line center, unless they bring somebody else in, unless they swap out for another center. But we'll see. All that stuff, all these questions to be TBA, to be announced, to be answered, Mick, over the last 25 games. Enjoy your Four Nations break. I'm sure we'll have you on next week and we'll break down some Four Nations stuff. That should be interesting. Are you going up to Montreal?
I am not, but I'll be at the Boston games.
I will too. So I will see you there. All right. Thank you, Mick. Let's thank our sponsors real quick. Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the bonus. $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Let's also thank our Game Time. If you need any kind of tickets, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Mick?
Time for the Beanpot Game Time.
Beanpot Game Time. Enjoy your Beanpot Game Time. Hopefully the championship game is much better than the first two games last week.
Hell yeah.
Blowout City, baby. All right, Mick, thank you very much for joining us, my friend. Everybody else out there, thanks for listening. We'll see you at the rink.